You know, it is a lifelong dream for many of us band directors to have a program that would get to a point where we would be able to perform at the Midwest Band and Orchestra Convention in Chicago every December. I have friends who have performed both with jazz ensembles and concert bands, and their programs have been just stellar and out of sight. And this is one of those things that people see as a benchmark to something to possibly attain. Now, not everyone is going to perform there in their career, but it's a huge honor to get to that point. And if anybody hasn't been to this convention before, I highly recommend it. At the same time, if you're a marching band teacher, Bands of America, Grand Nationals, to make top 10 or top 5 from a marching band side of things is also considered to be really a pinnacle of achievement, let alone to be able to have a program who performs at such a high level year after year after year after year. So it takes a truly special place to do that and a truly special set of teachers to make that happen. And there's a lot of amazing teachers out there who are not in situations where their groups are going to get to Midwest right now, or their marching band is going to perform at Bands of America. But there are people out there who are in that position, and it's really great to have an opportunity to learn from them. So I bring up both Midwest and Chicago as well as Bands of America Grand Nationals because William Mason High School in Mason, Ohio, is doing both of those things within a 5-week period. Now let that sink in. 2 things that are seminal moments, mountaintop moments for band directors and for programs and for towns and cities and schools. This school is achieving it both in the same 5-week period. I mean, it's just beyond belief. And I'm really lucky to be able to meet today with Ed Protzman, who is the director of bands at William Mason High School. Now, this, in Ed's words, William Mason is a very special place. So I'm really hoping to be able to learn a lot about what makes their program tick, what makes their program so successful. Because even though a lot of us, most of us have schools that are much smaller and are not able to offer as much, we can still take the principles from great programs like William Mason and apply them to our schools the best that we can. So in our conversation, we're not only going to talk about sort of what led him to be at William Mason, but we're going to talk about the Midwest process. Their performance is coming up on the 19th. If you're there, Monday the 19th, you want to make sure you check it out. And so they're preparing for that right now, and what it was like to apply and everything that goes along with Midwest, and having the great clinicians in to work with the bands ahead of time and all of that. I know he's beyond excited for the whole experience. So we're going to learn about that. We're also going to learn about the Bands of America Grand Nationals and what that whole experience is like, and the credit that he can give to his amazing staff for putting all of that together, because this is clearly something that not just one person can do, right? But, you know, we're going to get a chance to learn a lot. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Ed Protzman. It's going to be really fun. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. I'm very lucky to be spending some time with Ed Protzman from William Mason High School. I did a little introduction to speak about what your program is doing and how special it seems to be, even though I've never been there. Would you tell us first a little bit about Mason and what's so special about your school and your community?
Mason, in my mind, is really a special place. It's a really unique school. Our high school is pretty large for Ohio. It's actually the largest high school in Ohio. It's about 3,600 students.
Mm.
And it's also very diverse. So we have a couple of businesses and corporations in town that bring in students from different countries and cultures. So in our band program, there's almost always 10, 15 kids who are here for just a bit of time from Japan or from Korea or India. And then some families come and end up staying. Mm-hmm. So it's a cool place from a diversity standpoint. And the community itself really embraces the arts. We have a really super successful band program, but our choir program is also very large, and our orchestra program is very large. And the leaders of the school at the high school and from the district believe in the arts as an important aspect. And so we get a lot of support, not always financially, but nobody ever tells us no. When we come to somebody and say, we have this vision, we want to do the Rose Parade in 2024, we want to, do this, as long as we present how we're going to make that happen, they're always really supportive. No conversation ever starts with no. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's from all the years that the program has grown and been cultivated. A gentleman named Bob Bass really started it, becoming an incredible program. They performed at Midwest the first time under him and made it to finals. And then the other thing I think that makes Mason really just an incredible place, at least for me, because this is the first place I've experienced this as a teacher. Our 3 high school directors, our 3 middle school directors, and one of our 2 elementary directors are all involved in the marching band. Mm-hmm. And full-time. So the 3 middle school directors that are there, Zach Hinson and Aaron Rex and Joe Woody, all have aspects of the program that they completely run. And then Jason Sleppy at the high school is the actual marching band director, and Avius Jackson is the brass person. And I think that's unique because, 1, we have a lot of people helping each other, and 2, our students can go from 6th grade up until the high school and maintain contact and communication with teachers that they love. Mm-hmm. And so I think that helps keep lots of kids in the marching band program and concert program, even though, even though we require a lot of hours of practice and things. So it's just a unique place where everybody wants to be involved. We don't force anybody to be involved in all the programs. And it's the same way when the middle school has a concert, all the high school band directors go down and help. And when we just had a concert band camp this weekend, and they all came up and helped. So it's a unique collaboration that we have going on.
That's pretty great. That's super awesome. So you got to William Mason in 2017. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what led you there?
I have a kind of an interesting story. I did not start out my career at like the big giant program that had, all the resources and all the students. I started out in a really small town in Pennsylvania. And then as I continued my career and my learning, I'm a big believer in professional development and continued development. And as I kept developing myself and my understanding of wind band music and teaching, I changed schools once in Pennsylvania to a bigger school because I'd kind of gotten to the point with my first school where the things I wanted to do musically and project-wise just were a little bit above the scope of what the school wanted to do. And one day I was at my desk and I was on the NAFME website, and there was an ad posted about a school in Kansas City that was brand new. And so I thought, wow, that'd be really cool to open a brand new school. So I threw my hat in the ring there, and I got a really great teaching experience at a school called Blue Valley Southwest outside of Kansas City. And then kind of the same thing happened. I had always followed Mason. I was to both of their Midwest performances that they had. I remember seeing their Somewhere show at at a video from Grand Nationals and just thinking like, wow, that's amazing. And so I was always just impressed that they had the level of concert band program and the level of marching band program that they had. And I was kind of a Mason fan. And when I saw the ad online that they were looking for a new band director, I was very happy where I was at, but I was like, I can't not try and take this opportunity because I've admired this program from afar for many years. And then I just feel really fortunate that I was able to get the position and work with the great people that I work with and just be in a place where, band is really special at Mason and the community appreciates it and the parents appreciate it. So I got there by being willing to throw my hat in the ring, and fortunately they chose me.
I was looking up your bio a little bit. It mentioned that you were Grammy nominated in 2014. Is that correct?
Yes, I was, by a student at my school in Kansas City.
Congratulations. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. It's pretty neat when kids on their own go and nominate you for something, because that shows that all the effort you're putting in is having a great impact.
That must have been awesome. Yeah.
It was cool.
I also saw, tell me about the George Parks Award for Leadership in Music Education.
Yeah, I was really honored to get that award. It's an award where you have to be nominated by another person in the field. And I had an incredible experience in my undergraduate degree where I worked with a gentleman named Willis Rapp, who used to write all the percussion stuff for what used to be called Jensen Publications back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah. And while I was in school, he had gotten his doctorate in conducting and all that, and he was starting to do more and more concert band things. And I was not the best musician when I started school, and his mentorship and the image that he presented is what really turned on the fire in me to want to be a band director. And out of the blue, in that year, he had just, we've kept in touch and we have a great friendship. He nominated me for the award. And then I was fortunate to have a couple of people write me some really great letters. And when I was selected, I was really blown away because, as we know, George Parks, what he represented for music, and especially students, making students believe in themselves and leadership, to be, associated with a name of somebody like that who we unfortunately lost so early in what he in his career. I was just really honored. It was a humbling experience, and it was presented through Music for All and NAFME. And Music for All just always does a great job when they're taking a band director who's, whether you're winning an award or you're just at an event, they always make you feel very special. That's what I've gotten out of Music for All and Bands of America. It's not necessarily about the competition. They just always make you feel special. So that weekend when I was being presented with the award, they just made me feel great, and it was really cool, and I'm just so appreciative.
That's awesome. So those are things that you didn't mention, but I wanted to bring up because I thought those are pretty special.
Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about how the Mason program is set up, how the band program is set up?
Sure.
So I was doing a little bit of research, and I'm probably wrong here, but 4 concert bands or 5 concert bands? I couldn't really tell.
5 concert bands.
So how are those set up? Obviously, you have a top group and then a second group behind that.
Yeah, so our structure is we have our Wind Symphony that's performing at Midwest as our top group, and then our symphonic band, which does really big things too. They were selected to play at our state conference last year. Unfortunately, got snowed out and they didn't get to go. And then we have our third band that we call Concert Winds, and that band tends to be a lot of our really excited ninth graders. And so what we try and do with that band is, with a level of literature that's in the grade 3 and 4 area, we try and give them the full experience of, encouraging them to audition for honor band and bringing in clinicians and doing all that. And then under that, we have a group called Concert White, which is our first band that meets as a full band, because our final band, our 5th band, is actually split. So we call it Concert Green and Silver, and the woodwinds from that class that band meet in their own class, and the
Hmm.
brass meets in their own class, and then the percussion are dispersed. And the reason we do that is so that those woodwind and brass players that need a little more support and guidance can really get, lessons that are directed, right to them and their embouchures and their mouthpieces and all the things they have to do. Before that, Mason just had two other concert bands. They had six. And the directors that have been here longer than me really feel like this focusing on the woodwinds and the brass separate in that lower band has made a big difference in their ability to perform. And it's also retained more kids.
Sure, sure. Do they perform together or separately?
They do. The concert green and silver will have two dress rehearsals before a concert, and then they'll play together.
We do that similarly with we only have two bands, but our lower band is a wind band and then a percussion is separate. So we have to do that combination thing as well. But you're right. The ability to break them up is a huge asset.
Yeah, it really is. And we're fortunate at Mason, our boosters pay for a full-time percussion specialist. So in all the classes, our band directors are really spoiled in that we don't have to start the pieces with the kids. We have a guy named John Scharf who does an amazing job with that, and so we're pretty blessed on that end.
That's great. And lots of kids are taking lessons. I saw that it is required to take lessons in a couple of the bands. Is that true?
Yeah, in the upper bands, it's required. But really, by that third band, they're taking lessons on their own because they see the other kids doing it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of really great band programs, it's because of the culture that has developed over a long period of time.
Hmm.
And so the culture kind of is that lessons are great. And we're lucky we have lesson teachers that come into the building. So the kids see the teachers and they're like, oh, maybe I'll check out what that's all about.
That's great. That's great. All right, let's get on to Midwest. So how are you feeling? What are we 12 days out? Something like
Pretty
that?
much a week and 2 days out.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Midwest experience is really unique. And if anybody watching this is thinking that they would like to apply, I'm totally open to, a phone call or an email because it really is something you have to set up the audition very carefully and with a lot of deliberate choices. So it's really a 2-year experience. Last year, we spent the whole year getting ready to make the recordings and do the audition. And then obviously this year was spent on the preparation. So I was just saying to one of my colleagues today that like, wow, I can't believe in a week we're going to be at the end of this 2-year kind of
Hmm.
major project. And it's going well. I kind of feel like I'm in a bubble right now where I don't know, like, oh, are they good enough? Are they not good enough? Because I've just been in the band room with these same kids for so long now working on this stuff. But we're pretty excited. And the best part of it, the preparation has been, we've just had so many great mentors come in. Cheryl and Richard Floyd are both conducting on the concert. So they've been in a couple of times. And a couple of composers, Paul Dooley has been in and some other composers. So it's been a lot of fun. So even if the concert isn't exactly what we want it to be, which I hope it is, the experience for the students has already been pretty spectacular.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. So you were mentioning about how when you hear them day after day, you don't really know if they're good enough and all this. We're all in that position, right? You could be hearing the Eastman Wind Ensemble, but you hear them every day, so you hear all the problems. Or you could be hearing a really terrible band, but you hear them every day, so like that consistently listening to other groups is a really, really important thing. So it's good to hear that even with a really fantastic group like yours, you deal with the same doubts that we all deal with. I have a good friend named Linda Gammon. I don't know if you know Linda's name. She
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
yeah.
He's been
So,
in to our concert festival.
Linda's a good friend. And when our Wind Ensemble was performing at the NAFME All Eastern a few years ago, and before she gave me the advice, she said, look, all the band directors in the room, the majority of them are going to be judging your band. And the majority of them are going to think that their bands are just as good and they could have been there. But in the end, they're not, and you are. And don't worry about having a perfect performance. Just enjoy the experience because you don't know when it's going to happen again.
That's pretty awesome advice.
Yeah. It was like, yes, so what if they have a better band? Like they're not there, you're there.
Right.
And that's so I wish I could be there in person. I hope when you perform, you're not counting notes, that you're able to enjoy it.
Yeah, I do too, because it really is. about the experience. And we've tried to keep a focus on that. We have not like, you know, kind of push the kids harder than needed. And we've been watching them and trying to make sure that their experience and their energy for the music hasn't been diminished by, just doing things over and over again.
Mm-hmm. So what are you playing for repertoire?
So our big pieces, we're going to open the concert with Laud's Praise I Day by Ron Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool. I've always been a Ron Nelson fan, and he's a little older now, so I don't think he attends. But I sent him an email, and he sent us a nice email back thanking us for performing his work. And then our second piece is we're doing the three movements of Paul Dooley's Masks and Machines,
Okay.
That's our grade 6. It's a really incredibly well-crafted piece, really musical, and just every student gets to play something that is unique and slightly different. So we're really enjoying that piece, and he was able to come in and work with us. The third piece is going to be conducted by Richard Floyd, and it's a really wonderful grade 3 by Nicole Pueno, who's an Ohio composer. We wanted to include an Ohio composer.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did was she took Amazing Grace and taps and layered them on top of each other, and just this really rich and beautiful piece. And I think the people that come to the concert are going to find, no matter if their band is a excuse me, if their band is a grade 2, they could stretch and play Safely Rest. And if their band plays grade 6, they could play Safely Rest and have a super musical experience. After that piece,
Yeah, I'm going to stop you real quick. Is there a story behind that piece? Safely Rest?
I don't know if there's a story behind it. I know she talked to the kids about how she would use Amazing Grace as a warm-up in a school where she taught, and she kind of got the idea. The cool thing about that piece, she shared with the students that kind of the story almost came after the piece, in that she performed it, and there were some veterans in the audience, and they were just brought to tears, and they came up and just thanked her for putting all that together, and it just stirred so many emotions in them. And so which the students all got goosebumps when she talked about that. It was really very cool.
And you mentioned the Floyds. What's your connection with them?
Well, first of all, they are two of the most incredible people I've ever met, in that they are very open to working with groups of all levels. So we run a really nice Music for All affiliate concert band festival called the Cincinnati Regional Concert Band Festival. And through that, every year we get to bring in, 6 or 7 evaluators, and we try and bring in, really experienced people.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cheryl had been in working on our second stage, which is primarily like middle schools and other groups like that. And then the next year we invited Richard and her to come in. And then the next year we were like, hey, why don't you come in for 4 days before the festival and hang out with our kids? And our students and our directors have just developed such an incredible musical friendship with them. Mm-hmm. And the thing I love about the Floyds is they will, anything that maybe is negative going on in your ensemble, they will talk to the kids and you about it with the most graceful approach. But, they will both be honest with you. And I think that's what a great mentor is, because they're going to tell you what you need to work on, but they're also going to tell you the things that you're doing really well. And mm-hmm. if you need help getting to where you're going, they will offer you those resources. So we've just been super fortunate that we've developed this friendship with them, and they're in our program once or twice every year, and the kids know them and the kids feel like they're friends, and it's been really cool. And I think mentors are really important. That's
great. Thank you for sharing. Great. What's your next piece?
So Avius Jackson, one of our associate directors, is going to do Percy Granger's 17 come Sunday. Mm-hmm. After that. And then I'm going to conduct a piece by Evan Van Doren, who's a composer and show marching band show writer out of Texas. He has a really great grade two called Adventure Awaits. And I tried to make sure every piece that I picked had a reason behind it. So like Nicole was an Ohio composer, and I had the fortunate experience to actually teach Evan Van Doren in a little tiny drum corps in Allentown, Pennsylvania, called the Lehigh Valley Knights when he was 13, because his dad, Donnie Van Doren, the famous marching band drum corps, Donnie Van Doren, wanted him to be in drum corps, but knew he wasn't ready for an open class group. And then Evan went on and got his degree at Indiana, and was the drum major of Carolina Crown, and he now writes for lots of groups like Santa Clara Vanguard, and he taught in that Austin area of Texas and had wonderful marching bands that did great things. And but now he's gone on to be a full-time composer, and so we're playing that piece, and that's kind of neat for me, just that connection there to that piece. After that, we're doing a piece by John Williams. Actually, it's called Escapades for Alto Saxophone and Concert Band. It's from the film score to the movie Catch Me If You Can. And so we have an alto saxophone soloist, James Bunty, from the conservatory downtown here, the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. And then one of my best friends is playing vibes, because the solo in that piece is a little different than your average concerto. It's a very bright, happy kind of piece. And the solo is written out kind of like a bebop solo. And so the vibes and the saxophone are pretty much mirroring each other the whole time. So it's almost like a cool riff section from a bebop tune, and along with all those wonderful John Williams sounds and shapings. And so it's an awesome piece, and it's very bright. It's going to be it's perfect for the middle of the program, and kind of pep people up a little bit as we're going on. After that piece, we're doing a piece called Cook Straight Crossing, which I advise everybody to check out. It is a grade one. It is the best grade one band piece I've heard in a long time. It's by Laura Estes. And it's so musical for that limited palette that a grade one has to work with. And so I think a lot of people are going to come away wanting to bring that back to their band rooms. It's a really cool piece, and Cheryl Floyd's going to conduct that one. Originally, our guest conductors were supposed to be Cheryl Floyd, Richard Floyd, and Professor James Keene, who helped us make our audition recording. Unfortunately, Professor Keene passed away this summer, and that was pretty tragic for the band, because we really, man, he was just another great person to work with. But when I thought about, well, what do we do with this spot? I mean, Cheryl came to mind instantly as the perfect fit. And it also makes a lot of sense because Cheryl commissioned so many of those band pieces that fit that like 2, 3, 4 grade level. And so her conducting, again, I just think this piece is fantastic. It's going to be pretty cool. After that piece, we're playing Hands Across the Sea, the John Philip Sousa March. And then another great piece by a newer composer named Kalijah Dunton, and it's titled Stillwater. It's a grade 3, and it's another really just, it kind of floats between that line of being a lyrical piece, but having some other really interesting aspects, really playable. I think people are going to enjoy that piece, and that's being conducted by our third high school director, Jason Sleppy, who is our marching band director. Yep. And then we're going to close with a commission by Onsby Rose titled The Seventh Seal, which is actually dedicated to my father, who was a musician and a deacon in his church. That's why it has kind of that seventh seal, has that like kind of almost religious connection. And he passed away a while back, so I wanted to dedicate a piece to him. And it's a fast, really exciting and invigorated piece, so it'll be a good way to end the concert.
Sounds awesome. What are your travel plans with the kids? It's like I actually did the Google map. You're talking like just under 5 hours, right?
Yeah. So it's funny, when I went to you have to go to a meeting in the summer, and I was talking to the gentleman from the high school for the arts. I think it's Dreyfus that's coming from Florida. And he was talking about how it was going to be a pretty expensive, full out trip for his kids. We're fortunate with being 5 hours away. We're going in on Sunday. We're going to rehearse, go get dinner, and then on Monday we perform. And this is the weird thing if people don't know, the Midwest convention this year clinic is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday,
Yeah.
not the traditional Wednesday through Saturday. So I feel like the afternoon time on Monday is going to be pretty good because I think a lot of people are going to fly in on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids perform, and then we're going to let them go around the convention because I think being a student and going into the exhibition hall is probably a pretty mind-blowing experience, just seeing all that. Then we're going to go do the 360 tilt experience at the Hancock Tower, and it's like this big window, and you lean against it, and then it kind of bends out. Yeah, so I went on this summer, and my wife actually jumped back and off of it as it started because it's a little scary. And we're going to do Gino's Pizza, and then some shopping the next day, and they're going to head out, but I'm going to stay for the rest of the convention.
How many chaperones do you need?
We have about 10 chaperones, which is probably more than we need for 54 kids, but um, our parents are great that way. I won't have to worry about giving out any medications or checking kids in their rooms. Here's a unique thing. This might be something somebody would be interested in creating at their school. Way before me, again, Bob Bass, who started the program, they created this thing called Band-Aids. And the school, we have like these 12 chaperones that the school pays $50 a year. Now they take it out of our band account, but they officially pay them, which brings them onto the school insurance. And then they take our like video training on how to distribute medicines. So they're allowed to distribute medicines to students when we're on a trip. So our band directors get the pleasure of not having to sit there and hand out medications and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty amazing. So we have about 10 chaperones with us.
And I assume those 10 chaperone are parents of kids who are in the group mainly.
Yes, they are.
So how special is it that those parents get to live that?
Oh, it's real
kids,
special. And we have at least 4 parents who had a student in the group the last time they went in 2016. So this will be their second student going through the Midwest experience. Wow. And it was pretty cool because when we got accepted, and when you get accepted to something big and you have to go to your boosters and say, well, we're probably going to need a little more money. Those parents were just like, that was the most amazing experience. We have to support this. We have to do it. So it was cool.
That's awesome. So in the introduction, I did a couple things before I brought you on. I mentioned what an achievement it is to perform at Midwest, as most of us know, but also on the marching band side of things, being, top 5 in BOA, and the fact that your school has done this on a couple of different times. But I pointed out that within 5 weeks, you have students who are performing in both of these venues. And man, those kids are going to look back at such an amazing time and all that. So I wanted to, we are running out of time, but what I'd like to do is get in a little bit to the Bands of America side of things, and maybe a little bit about how the marching band goes as well. And I also played a clip, thank you for allowing me, of it was like, your oboe player needs scholarships wherever
she's going into music for sure.
She's fantastic. I mean, that oboe solo, and behind the video I was watching, I couldn't really see, was that a flute choir?
Yep.
That was behind. And I also saw alto flute at one point, I believe.
Yep. That's our 10th grade flute player who played the alto flute and all those other flute solos. Yeah.
So I put that little clip on because when I watched your show, I've seen it a couple times. That moment was just, I'm a sucker for just like the really gorgeous musical moment visually and musically, and that was it. So thanks for letting us share that.
Yeah, this was my favorite show I think I've been involved in my career, just because of the artistic level of what we were trying to do visually and musically. It was really neat.
I can't wait to talk about that. So if I'm correct, the top 5 bands for BOA were Avon, in a different order: Avon, Tarpon Springs, Carmel, Broken Arrow, and William Mason. Correct?
Yeah, we were 4th.
So correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what a prestigious group of bands. Yeah. I mean, just to be in, like you mentioned, being mentioned with somebody like George Parks' name, just these programs are such staple programs.
Yeah, it's when you're at retreat, and no matter where you finish at finals, if you're in finals, you've done a pretty amazing thing. And I would say the same for semifinals. For some groups, when they cross that line of the first time they get into semifinals or the first time they get into finals, it's a pretty awesome thing. To be on the field though with the educational teams on the sideline as the kids are out there for retreat with, standing next to the teams, the directors from all those amazing schools. There are moments where I have to be like, do I even belong standing here? Like these are like real people in this industry. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you guys square? Because clearly the education of the kids and their musical experience is your first and foremost thing. You can't have a program flourish like this in all the areas without that. So how do you guys square the competitive music portion of it? Is there like a clear approach you guys take to the competitive side of things?
Yeah, I think one of the great things that we have, because all the directors are involved in pretty much everything, there's a consistency from sixth grade through our seventh and eighth grade at the middle school, and then through all the bands of the high school, which includes the marching band. There's a consistency of approach to how you play your instrument, the process that goes into starting something, whether it's Masks and Machines or it's, a BOA finalist marching band program. There's a process to that. You start with the fundamentals, you start to take little steps and you perfect them along the way and you review. And so our process to things is pretty consistent. And so when a student joins marching band, it's really, it's very different, obviously, than their middle school band class.
Mm-hmm.
But in their middle school band class, they had big goals. They knew the pieces they were going to play at our concert band festival, and they understand how they broke that down, and they did sectionals, and they needed certain fundamentals to make it happen. So we don't switch any major gears when we're in marching band. The other thing that we really like to do is we have a lot of musical friends that we bring in. And so nobody on our staff believes that the way they do something is the way it has to be done. It has to always be done. So we bring in, we have Freddie Martin in several times a year, and he just gets our kids to play with this really lush brass tone. And then we have Gino Cipriani come in for a couple of days, and he's all about the energy and the approach. And so we are always trying to learn as a staff as well. So I just think that the consistency and the students know what to expect. And I think, this kind of goes to, I was thinking, what can you say, to somebody that can take away from listening about Midwest or BOA that doesn't have a program that's ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe, and I think maybe I'll turn this into a conference, proposal or something, but I really believe you can have a box five experience no matter the level or ability of your kids. You can always bring in guests. You can always, make sure that kids are prepared and do the right fundamentals, and you can make sure they have some kind of culminating experience. And I think that's what it's about for our kids. They love the experience of putting it together. And then they love the end product when they get to show it off.
So they focus on getting good, and the numbers just take care of itself.
Oh yeah, we don't really talk about like beating someone or because Grand Nationals is such an interesting thing because there were probably, and you just have to be honest with yourself, there were probably 10 bands around the country that could have scored higher than us that just didn't come that year.
Mm-hmm.
And in some years, we're the band that's really well prepared and we're there, so you just have to be good. You have to understand what the judges are looking for. There's definitely a game, there's a gamesmanship part of it. And but if you're going into that and you're investing in going to Grand Nationals, then you've got to be ready to play that game, because that's what's going to make you successful. So yeah, I think we just try and be good, and we try and be good in everything we do. And that, it sounds arrogant, but we try and be good in our fifth band, and that just
Hmm.
means we're playing the grade point 0.5 piece really well.
Correct.
And you can do that in everything.
Well, once you teach them how to be successful at a younger age, they get older and they're successful at an older age.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
some programs who focus more on their upper level kids than they do their lower level kids, right? I don't think that's a really great recipe, trying to give every kid the teaching they need at that level to allow them to grow where they need to be.
Yeah, I heard a really good line one time, and I think it was on. There's a thing called the Texas Yellow Board where people post like things, and the line was, "How do you make your second band better? We'll start a third band." Because then you have kids getting more attention, and but you can't forget about you got to work harder with. Here's the thing: when you have 300 kids in your band program, 20% of those kids are going to be pretty good, and it really has nothing to do with what I'm doing. They're taking
Correct.
private lessons. Their parents have them in all kinds of clubs and activities. So for us to put together a really great wind ensemble or wind symphony, I mean, it's a feat, but not the same as it is to get those fifth band kids to be successful. And
Sure.
that's more important.
Sure. So how is the marching band set up? I was reading online a little bit on your website, which is quite good. The They're required to take it. Am I correct in as a ninth grader? And then after that, they have a choice.
Actually, they're not required to take it at any point.
Okay.
They can't be in our top two ensembles in ninth grade if they don't take it. And the reason for that is those top two groups usually travel every year. They do a lot of intense things. And so marching band is where we really get to share the culture of our program with
Sure.
kids in ninth grade, but they don't have to be in it. We're fortunate that our school, if a student is in marching band 2 years, they get a PE waiver. They don't
Hmm.
get a grade, they don't get a credit, but they are no longer required to take PE in their schedule.
Okay.
So a lot of kids there are kids that will just take it for 2 years and they decide not to. That's pretty rare, but that is a benefit of being in our marching band. It's all extracurricular. We don't do any marching band during the day.
Yep.
We have never played a note of marching band music inside since I've been there. It's just purely extracurricular, but it's co-curricular in our course guide because they get a grade, and then there's that gym class connection.
How do you work out? Are there kids who are also athletes who are performing in marching band, but also on the football team or things like that? Or is it a separate group of kids?
There are some, but our school is pretty serious about sports as well. So we find even if we're willing to be flexible, what it takes to be a starter on one of our teams doesn't allow for you to miss any practices for one of our sports.
Yep.
And we have a lot of kids, which is fortunate. And we have some kids who don't do marching band because they are like really serious about swimming or cross country. And we try and support them in that as much as we can.
Sure. So we all deal with the same stuff, just on different
Yep.
levels. Yep.
I
So
think sometimes people think at like these big schools like Carmel, Broken Arrow, Mason, like, magical things are happening. And it's not. We were just sitting in our office today going like, oh my gosh, do we have enough really good trumpets next year to fit? We're worrying about the same things because every time you add a band, then you're worrying about, oh, do you have enough bassoons? Do you have enough horns? And it's the same.
that's right. It's just with me, we have 650 kids in my high school, and you have
Right.
3,600 kids.
But look at your percentage. That's pretty good.
That's right. That's right. I think our percentages are similar. So feel good about that. Okay. Let's talk about the 2020 show Odyssey. I actually don't know much of the story behind it. I did write down some notes as I was watching it for like the fourth time. Some of the reasons I really liked the show, it was really colorful. Like I mentioned earlier, I really like a pretty show, a colorful show, a musical show. It shows the foundation in dance that all the band members are dancing. The use of capes was really, really cool. Um, and again, that oboe solo, and the alto, the chamber music that you guys use within the marching program is quite spectacular. So, could you talk a little bit about how this year went specifically for you guys, maybe in the design of that show, or I know you're not as involved as the other directors with the marching band, but or how much more credit can you give them, sort of thing. I just want to talk a little bit more about that show.
Well, like I said, we're all involved in marching band equally, but we're really good about finding whose strengths are where they are. And Jason Sleppy, who is our marching band, he's our marching band director, especially from the creative side and the planning of rehearsals. He's really great at it. He loves it. And he works hand in hand with Wes Cartwright, who's our show designer. And that's where the ideas come up, and Wes will present. He's a genius in what he does, and he presents his ideas on what music he thinks will work, and then Jason works with him to kind of shape it, and makes it come to total fruition. And this year's show, I felt like kind of what you were saying, that it was just fully coordinated. And sometimes you start with that idea in mind and you don't really make it to the end, but I just, like you said, I also like the colors and the chamber music, and I kind of like that it started and it kind of ended in the same place that it started. There was a real journey or odyssey within the show. And it wasn't built on any specific thing. And it was more about, a journey from beginning to end, and how that happens.
Yeah, it was really well developed. I thought, what were the musical selections that were used?
We had a whole bunch of different things that came from very unique sources. So off of the top of my head, I can't even pull those up.
Okay.
There was some music that we had found on YouTube that we got permission to use, and Jim Wunderlich is our arranger, and he did a really great job fusing together all the ideas.
That's great. So as you guys are planning ahead to next year, you guys go to BOA every year, correct?
We do, yeah.
Great. So what does the planning process look like for your staff?
Well, again, Jason Sleppy is our head director, and then Zach Hinson runs our woodwind program, Avius Jackson runs our brass, and Joe Woody runs our percussion program. And so it all starts, Jason and one or two other directors, depending upon who it is, will go to Texas and meet with Wes Cartwright. Now, normally that happens like in January, February, but we've had the great fortune of being selected to be in the 2024 Rose Parade. So we have to take deposits on that trip by the end of January. So we have to know what we're doing and all that early. So Jason and Zach they're actually flying to meet with our designers, flying back, jumping in a car and driving to Midwest all over the course of next weekend.
Wow.
But again, they love it, and that's what they do. They're really good at it. So they are in the, planning process now, because financially the Rose Parade is going to be something that we have to be really smart about. So unless we know what the marching band show is doing, we can't really put that plan together. So we're going to be ahead of the game this year a little bit.
That's great. What was the question I had? Oh, so with your designer being in Texas, does he come up to teach in person at all, or is it your staff that teaches the show?
Yeah. Again, we have a real guest-based teaching approach. So Wes will come in several times a season, and then Jason will fly and meet with him. Michael Rosales is the person that teaches our dance, and so he'll come in 3 or 4 times a year, and then our visual person, Johnny Green, will videotape everything Michael's doing, and Johnny's also one of our band directors, which is really cool to have our visual person be a band director. So Wes comes in, Jim Wunderlich comes in, Michael Rosales comes in. So we're really fortunate that as the show is progressing, we have people that will come in and teach a new element or say, that's not really going in the right direction. Let's change that and do this or that.
That's great. Well, what a great program. I'm just excited to learn. Can we wrap up maybe with some things that we can share with other band directors? We already did a little bit about giving every program a 5-star, a box 5 experience, I think was your phrase. What are some tips when it comes to the private lesson program? Do you have any experience with maybe having to be somewhere and starting something?
Yeah, we're very fortunate with our private lesson program. Bob Bass had it instituted into the school, and at some point somebody said, well, wait a minute, how do we have these teachers coming in that are being paid by students and they're not teachers? But again, at Mason, instead of saying, no, you can't do it, well, they said, well, then how do we do it and make it right? So the school has a contract the teachers signed. The teachers pay 5% of their income. Now it's on the honor system. to the school for rental. And then the school has installed cameras in every one of the teachers' areas so that, parents can be assured of the safety of their student. And it works really great. But a lesson and there's a lot of schools in our area that are not allowed to do it. They're not allowed to bring in teachers to teach and get paid while the school day is going on. And so I learned something during COVID. When we hit COVID, most of our students stayed with their teachers via Zoom. Now, we all know Zoom is not the best option for a private lesson, but what's interesting is we came back to school that next fall, and a lot of our private teachers, actually all of our private teachers, were not allowed to come back yet. So what we did was the kids still went to the practice room like they were taking their private lesson, but they went in and used their laptop and took a Zoom lesson. And that made me think, if a school isn't allowed to have private teachers in, maybe they could develop a system where, a kid does 3 Zoom lessons and then they do an after school live clinic, something like that, because you're not chained up with those tax things and safety things because the teacher's not in the school. So I would recommend, if you can't do it, trying to be really creative. When I was in Kansas, what I did was I was not allowed to have kids pay teachers. So what I did was the kids would give a donation into our boosters. And then once a week, I had a flute clinician who came in and worked with all the flutes in whatever band, in each band. And then I had a clarinet clinician come in. And that was another way around. It was kind of a halfway. It wasn't a private lesson. But then a lot of those kids ended up taking private lessons with that person anyway, because they liked them. But we always say that we think that our private lesson program is one of the reasons why our kids play so well, because we have great teachers.
Sure is. And you mentioned earlier, I believe this too. My wife and I, we teach in a much smaller program, but she teaches them from 5 through 8, and then I teach them from 9 through 12. So we have a cohesive way that we teach them from when they start until the end. And you guys have much more teachers and many more students, but the same approach, it seems like, where everybody's sort of on the same page. I assume that would be one of your top things if you're helping somebody maybe get their middle school, high school program in order. Maybe they're trying to make some improvements, is finding a way to get everybody on board. Do you have any more tips in developing some of that cohesive middle school, high school program?
Yeah. First of all, again, I think I'll go back to culture of the program and relationships. I've been in a lot. I think I've done this times where, like, oh man, that middle school director, they don't come and help the high school. But then you have to think, well, how many times have you gone down and helped them? Have you taken time to build a relationship and go out to dinner once a month and talk about the band program and encourage them to get more involved? And, so if you go back to relationships and culture, some of those other things can arise naturally out of that. But when you go in as a new director to just demand that the middle school teacher be at all of the marching band things, that's probably not going to be very successful. But if you can say, hey, when you're having after school rehearsal, I'll come down. And even if it means I'm just helping keep the kids organized, that they may be more apt to want to come up and help you. It has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Sure. So as we're closing up, some of the great programs, you teach at one of them, what do all the good programs have in common? I'm going a little bit off the script here, but, is there something else that you see as a really important key to any good program that you witness around the country?
Yeah. I think this goes for bigger or smaller programs. I think the key is that when you go to these programs, the kids all really want to be there. And I think it's probably the same. Like if you come to Mason, we have 8 kids out of a concert band program of 300 that want to be music majors. So that's not the reason that they're all staying in there. It's the overall experience. I think our kids, and I think the kids in Carmel and Broken Arrow would say part of it is they want to be with their friends and a really great experience. So I think the underlying thing that kind of you see in all those programs again is the culture of the program is in a place where every kid matters in the program, not just the top band kids. if you're willing to do the work and rehearse all the hours the marching band's going to rehearse, you're going to get an amazing experience. I think, a lot of these bigger programs, you might be surprised. They're not kind of working their kids into submission to win a trophy. There's really great rehearsal processes and things like that. And I think we're all becoming more aware of the mental wellness factor of students and, keeping students feeling mentally healthy as well as physically healthy. And I think you'd find that in the bigger programs as well.
Well, one thing that I really liked, when we started this podcast a while ago, Jeff and I, we really liked the thought of no matter how long you teach, trying to continue to grow and get better. So when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you rot. So, you're somebody who's at one of the top programs in the country. And you talked earlier about your staff is always looking to learn from other people and looking to fly people in and get better because, it's not about it's about doing what's right. It doesn't matter who's right. Right. So I admire that about you and your staff, and whether or not they had that or you helped cultivate that in them. That's something that I think students around the country would be better off if more band directors had that approach.
Yeah. And I think back to my first teaching position where really I had no money at all. And I think I was always waiting to get good enough to bring people in. And I always thought it had to be like world renowned people. And there were a lot of people in the Allentown area that I could have invited in who would have come in for no money and would have been willing to work with my kids. And I didn't do it. And that's one of my regrets as a teacher now that I see what that does. So, I would say don't wait until your program gets quote unquote good before you start bringing in people and developing these relationships. Do it, Cheryl Floyd would come in and work with kids who barely knew how to hold their instruments if they were willing to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be a Cheryl Floyd. It can be, the person down the street who owns a music store is willing to come in and work with your saxophones and whatever it is.
So we've talked about a lot of other really good bands too. One final thing, is there a band we haven't talked about or a band director that people should know about? A program that's not William Mason, but that also does things really well that we should check out on YouTube and other things?
Yeah, I think if you're going to be at Midwest, I would check out the Las Vegas Academy for the Arts. He's doing a great job. He actually student taught at Mason. The other directors know him really well. I don't know him. But that's a program there that I think is really unique and different. I think if you're looking at kind of the bigger program that, is maybe not recognized yet, it's hard to say because there's just so many really great band programs out there. I really enjoy Bobby Lambert's program at Wando. I think Bobby, Bobby probably.
I don't. Nope.
Oh, okay. But yeah, Bobby Lambert at Wando, he does a lot of stuff with Music for All with their drum major camps. And he's just another great human being. And I think he teaches as a great human being. And that's why his kids love him and want to be in the program. They played at Midwest, I think, 2 years ago. So that's another really awesome program. That's from a region of the country where maybe that's not necessarily the norm. We always hear, and, we have so much respect for the way the Texas system is set up and organized. But, every once in a while you get these bands in these different areas that have really figured it out. And Bobby's program is one of those.
Where is that program located?
It's either in North or South Carolina. I'm not 100% sure. It's Wando High School. And Bobby's just a fantastic clinician. He's a fantastic band director. And above all, he's a really great human being.
I assume you're okay with people reaching out to you for questions about anything. How would you prefer?
Oh, yeah. I think that's another thing you'll find when you get these directors who are a little bit further on in their career that have experienced some things, we're excited to share. Like, if, somebody wants to, talk about how you get to Midwest or how you set up a fundamentals program. I think a lot of band directors love sharing that kind of information. And the cool part of it is, the person who's asking for you to share probably knows something you don't know. So you'll learn something too.
Sure. Well, people could find you easily online just by Google searching your name. They could also contact the show if they'd like, and I'd be happy to put them in touch with you. So, Ed, thanks very much. This has been a lot of fun.
I really appreciate it.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.